A rough, dusty trading post on the edge of the frontier. Rancher Eli Slade wasn't looking for anything unusual, just a few strong mules, maybe some barbed wire if the trader wasn't gouging. He stood at the edge of the crowd, arms folded beneath his worn duster, letting the heat and noise of the auction wash over him. Traders barked prices, dust swirled in dry gusts, and livestock cried out in cramped pens. Same scene as always. But then the murmurs started, confused, amused, a little nervous. A pair of handlers emerged from a side pen, dragging a figure between them. A girl. Tall, no, giant, for her age, broad-shouldered and barefoot. Shackled at the wrists, a thick iron collar around her neck, she looked more beast than girl. Her wild black hair hung in snarls, framing a dirt-smudged face with fierce eyes that never once blinked. A crudely painted sign hung from a rope around her chest, too wild. Untrainable. The auctioneer barely disguised his contempt. Sold her 3 times. All 3 returned her. Broke a man's jaw last time. Eats like a mule and obeys like a rock. Who'll take her? The crowd laughed, jeered, tossed out lowball offers for the novelty of it. But Eli didn't laugh. He didn't speak either. He just watched. There was something in the girl's stillness, not fear. Not defiance, exactly. Waiting. She wasn't snarling or flinching. She was observing, calculating. Like a caged animal that had seen too much, survived too much. Without quite knowing why, Eli raised his hand. $2, he said simply. The crowd quieted. Even the auctioneer blinked. Sold, he said after a pause. She didn't thank him. She didn't even look at him. She just followed, silently, like a shadow too heavy for the light. A wagon creaking along dirt roads under a blood-orange sunset. The wagon rocked gently as it rolled over the uneven trail, wheels groaning with each rut and stone. The horses snorted in the cooling air, their flanks shimmering with sweat. Overhead, the sky bled into shades of rust and fire, one of those dusks that made the world feel older than it was. Eli Slade sat at the reins, eyes flicking sideways to the girl seated beside him. She hadn't spoken since they left the trading post. Not a word. Not a glance. She sat tense, arms curled protectively around herself, knees pulled high despite her size. Her bare feet, calloused and dirty, braced against the edge of the wagon as if ready to leap at the first sign of danger. Her eyes darted constantly, not in curiosity, but survival, scanning tree lines, shadows, and birds overhead like she expected an attack from every direction. Eli reached into his coat and pulled out a strip of jerky, holding it out to her. She didn't take it. In fact, she recoiled, her whole body jerking back like a startled animal. Her lip curled, not in a snarl, but in deep confusion. She looked at the food like it was something foreign. Eli set it gently beside her and said nothing. His eyes moved to her wrists, where the skin was raw and darkened, scarred, not from a single cut, but the steady bite of metal over time. Shackles. Restraint. Not from fighting. From captivity. Whatever she was, she hadn't been raised wild. She'd been kept. She wasn't feral, she was damaged, worn down like something once free and now afraid of the sky. Eli tightened the reins slightly and looked forward. "I ain't here to tame you," he murmured. "Just take you home." She didn't respond. But she didn't jump either. The ranch's stables at night. The moon hung low and swollen, casting long silver shadows across the valley. Eli shot upright in bed at the sharp crack of splintering wood. For a second, he wasn't sure if he'd dreamed it. Then came a panicked whinny, followed by the clatter of hooves. He threw on his coat and grabbed the lantern from the hook by the door. The barn loomed ahead, half in shadow. One of the side panels had been smashed open from the inside, the edges jagged where a plank had given out. Eli approached carefully, lantern raised. Inside, He froze. She was there. The girl, barefoot, wild-haired, silent, stood with a fully grown stallion rearing beside her. It towered, froth at its lips, kicking at the air. And yet, she didn't flinch. With one arm, she grabbed the rope dangling from its halter and pulled it down. Not violently. Firmly. The horse dropped back to the ground with a grunt, trembling. She guided it, quietly, steadily, back into its stall like she'd done it 1,000 times. Eli's breath caught. She hadn't seen him yet. The way she moved, low, balanced, reminded him of the wolves he'd once tracked in the high pass. Not wild for the sake of chaos, but designed for survival. Her head tilted suddenly, ears twitching, and she turned slowly toward him. Not with fear. Not even surprise. Just awareness. He said nothing. Later, when the barn quieted again, he watched from the doorway as she curled herself into the hay in the corner. Not stretched out like a girl sleeping, but coiled, like something ready to spring. One eye half open. Breathing slow. Something about her strength. Her instincts. Her silence. Eli stood in the dark a long while. Maybe she wasn't just raised away from people. Maybe she wasn't born to them at all. A remote glade where the girl often disappears to. Eli had noticed it more than once, how she slipped away when the light began to fade, silent as a shadow. He never asked where she went. He wasn't the type to pry. But tonight, something pulled at him. A whisper of wind, or instinct maybe. He saddled his horse and followed, careful to keep his distance. She moved like smoke through the trees, barefoot and sure, as if the woods were her skin and the stars her compass. The trail narrowed into an overgrown path, and soon Eli dismounted, moving on foot. Then he saw it. A clearing bathed in silver moonlight, hidden deep within the forest's cradle. The girl stood at its center, tall and barefoot on the mossy ground, her arms stretched to the sky like a prayer in motion. The breeze played through her tangled hair, and her skin, Eli blinked, glowed. Not brightly. Just faintly. Like morning light beneath water. That's when they came. A dozen elk, silent and spectral, stepped into the clearing. Massive antlers. Glossy eyes. One lowered its head and brushed its muzzle against her hand. She didn't flinch. They weren't afraid. Eli stepped forward, a twig snapping beneath his boot. She turned. No alarm in her face. Only stillness. Acceptance. I followed you, he said quietly. I know, she answered, finally speaking, her voice low, melodic, almost like wind through pine. Eli stared. What are you? She looked toward the stars. I wasn't raised by people, she said. I was born of earth and sky. They found me. They tried to own me. Break me. Cage me. Her eyes met his. Calm. Fierce. You didn't. He didn't know what to say. But deep inside, Eli knew, this girl wasn't meant to live in the world. She was meant to watch it. To belong to it. The ranch, now thriving, seasons later. The ranch looked different now, not because the buildings had changed, but because everything felt more alive. The fields stretched greener, the cattle healthier. The air carried a strange, quiet rhythm, like the land itself had begun to breathe again. Mira moved through it all like she'd always belonged there. Still towering, still strange, but no longer silent. She worked beside Eli in the fields, her strength turning soil in half the time it once took him. She calmed skittish horses with a single touch, whispered to hawks overhead, and could predict rain better than any almanac. When lightning threatened, she stood out under the sky with her arms raised, not frightened, but listening. Connected. Eli watched her sometimes from the porch. She rarely smiled, but when she did, it came slow and real, like sunlight breaking through cloud. He'd given her a name, Mira. It was the name of a long-forgotten star, he said. She'd accepted it with a quiet nod, never offering another. She still slept outside, curled near the barn or in the long grass beneath the oak tree, always close to the edge of wilderness. But she came to the house when she wanted. Ate at the table. Sat in silence beside the fire. Not out of duty, but choice. And Eli? He never questioned her. Never tried to shape her into something else. He gave her space, and in return, she gave him everything that mattered, peace, safety, and the unshakable sense that he wasn't alone anymore. He'd once bought her from a crowd that called her, too wild. They didn't understand. She wasn't too wild. She was exactly as wild as the world had made her. And she stayed, not because he owned her. But because he never tried to.